Okay, I propose we start as we reach already a reasonable number of participants. Thanks for all of you to be with us. Good morning. Very happy to be with you this morning with a new webinar of the think tank resource. We are going to tackle a subject which is of a high interest: innovative approaches to provide water in Africa. We know that innovation is coming from emerging market as much as from, I would say, the European grounds. Today with us, we have an exceptional round of panelists who are going to be with us, and which this panel is going to be animated by Grégoire Landel. First of all, I would like to introduce Christelle Kwizera. Christelle is a Rwanda mechanical engineer and social entrepreneur. She founded Water Access Rwanda in 2014, and this organization has provided water to 160 individuals, but also farmers and business using both smart water mini-grids, but also boreholes. Christelle, we have to leave us at 9:30, so we'll start with her. She's invited at the national delegation for the celebration of the Rwanda genocide, who is today. So thank you for dedicating such time with us, Christelle, this morning. Second, we have Jamila Bargach, who is an executive manager and co-founder of Darcimad. You're an anthropologist by training with a PhD from Rice University. You are also tutoring at the University of Mohammed V in Rabat. You are going to speak with us and present to us experiences in Morocco. You have also a long, I would say, tradition of publishing articles and practices. Said with us also Régis Garandeau. Régis is a people that we have, we're very happy to have today with us. He's not extremely on the scene, but he is the head of water and sanitation and hygiene of the Vitol Foundation. And as such, Vitol finance and advise non-profit and for-profit working practices toward better wash services and products for the bottom of the pyramid. And thanks to be with us, because I know that your time is of essence. And ultimately, my good friend, Grégoire Landel, who is going to make the animation of this webinar. He's an entrepreneur by nature, I would say. He's a CEO and founder of City Taps. He studied a lot in US, in Princeton, very prestigious university, Columbia, the MIT also, and after an experience in US, went back to France, when he became an expert in the water and finance nexus in developing countries, and in particular with a unique smart and pay-as-you-go solution that has been developed within City Taps. Thanks, Grégoire, to be with us. And as the time is of essence, it's already 9:05. I'm on time. I'm going to hand over the word to you, Grégoire. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Patrice, for this introduction, and welcome everybody. I'd just like to take a second to commemorate the victims of the Rwandan genocide, as today is Rwandan Genocide Commemoration Day. And I particularly want to state that I'm very glad that the French government has come out with a report that lays out the responsibility of the president at the time, that not be swept under the rug, so that memory can be used for future growth and for the reconciliation between our people. Let me hand the floor over right away to Christelle from Water Access Rwanda, who will tell us about her project, and then I will ask her a few questions before she has to leave in about 20 minutes. Thank you very much. Go ahead, Christelle, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Grégoire. I'm very happy to still be on this webinar, and sorry that I will have to leave early, but I hope we can discuss some interesting things. I say today is the commemoration of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, so it's quite a big mournful day for Rwanda. but still I'm super glad to be here presenting one of the solutions that's helping Rwanda be better. In 2014, I founded Water Access Rwanda, and the reason I did that was a year earlier, I got interested in the water sector, and like everybody else, I was broken to see pictures of kids fetching from dirty water sources and women working long hours to get water. I decided to do something about it. And like everybody else, I embarked on a borehole drilling mission. I did a summer borehole drilling mission where we drilled many such boreholes, as you can see on the right. And we had a lot of celebratory pictures, as you see. But this is never a permanent solution, as I was about to discover. Realized that this was a solution that often goes broken, abandoned, and in the best of cases, the village outgrows the solution. In the top left here, you can see how a community of over 1,000 households was surviving with just one borehole. When we arrived, we heard stories of women calculating how many days they're going to take a shower every week. So this was, for me, quite unreal. This community on the map was shown as having access to water, yet they were taking showers barely weekly. Women were having to wake up at 3 a.m. Having kids was completely undoable in having hygiene because of this. With Water Access Rwanda, we decided to do something quite different here. We drafted a vision where it wasn't just about access to water, but it was access to water in a convenient manner. These pictures here, it was a painting by my very good friend. They represent our vision from fetching water at dirty sources, but not stopping at the public point, but going a step further into people's homes so they can fetch water with glasses. So the same way you open a tap and get a glass of water without thinking of buying heavy jerry cans, walking, purifying that water, offer the peace of mind to everyone so that they can get water without thinking twice about what happened to that water to get to them. And for us, that looks like water at home. What this results in is very happy customers. Our satisfaction rate is quite high. But beyond that, when we do an impact survey, we see that people are happier with the time they have with their kids. We see that kids are doing better in school. We see that the feeling of épanouissement, I think some people falling out from French, so they'll do that word. The feeling of just being and being happy, being able to leave one less worry in your day happens. And this is especially more powerful with women who see their domestic work reduced quite a lot. And for kids, there is this right to play. I loved meeting this lady who was wearing this t-shirt that says right to play. Often when we burden kids with all this domestic work, which families don't have an option, as I like to say, water is the next basic need of life next to air. So when you only have access to water where you have to work for it, of course you're going to do it. And for us, this results in, nice pictures that I can post to donors and show long lines of jerry cans, and they're like, oh, wow, you have business. That's a problem, and that's what I'm trying to show. Those long lines, they look nice on pictures, but that's a problem because that means the people in the line are having to walk out with these heavy jerry cans and they're waiting in line. And how we solve this, also environmental justice. We have a long story with crocodiles, people going to rivers and getting killed by crocodiles, mothers worrying that their kids never come back from going to fetch water. And this friction between humans and nature is something that we talk about often and work against. So there is a bunch of environmental justice issues, such as, first of all, protecting the barriers between human and the rest of nature, but reducing riverbank activities, because if you live in Africa, laundry in rural areas tends to happen at the riverbanks, because imagine doing laundry when you don't have access to water at home. You have to haul all these jerry cans, which is not convenient. So people just do it near the river. But at the same time, by providing safe water, people no longer have to cut down trees to be able to build that water. So we're also saving trees and increasing carbon sequestration. So how we do it is we do water mini-grids, and we also do smart rainwater harvesting, different things to encourage people to allow people to have water in their homes safe from a tap. We adopt a proper tariff. We're trying to prove a financial model with a very low price. If we can prove it at a very low price, when we can afford to charge more, then we will. But this is a very proper nationally approved regulated tariff, and we use prepaid meters to make sure there is no revenue loss. So our revenue loss varies between 5 to 13% in the highest cases, but in some areas it's just 5%, which is quite good within the water sector. So we try to use that to basically be efficient in getting the money so that we never need to charge more. The other thing that we do is we make sure that the systems are run by young people. Why young people? As a company that can mobilize resources, we're able to afford social benefit for our workers. For example, being able to provide insurance where only one member of the family pays, but the full family is covered. And by having so many employees, then this is really cheap for the company, actually. And we also offer pension. So this means as young people in the community transitioning to college or without money to go to university, or they can take 5 years to work with us running a water point. And by the time they finish, they've accumulated 5 years towards their pension. Their family has had insurance the whole time. And it's also a good job for the same mothers who used to work for water. So if they're housewives or don't have another professional skill, they can come and run one of our water points and their whole family will have insurance and they have a basic salary on top of the commissions they make from selling water. Thank you. That's how we're doing it at Water Access Rwanda. Excited for this discussion.
Thank you, Christelle, and well done. This is rather impressive. I have a few questions that come to mind. First, a quick reaction. At City Taps, our vision is running water in every home, and so we're quite aligned with your vision that it's very important for people to have access in their homes. And I agree with you that there's sort of a bane of nice pictures. The sort of donor picture is a bit of a problem, in fact, because it's what sells. But it's in fact a bit of a curse. And it's, nobody has ever gotten reelected or gotten funded by taking a picture of a buried pipe. Buried pipe isn't very photogenic. And yet the buried pipe is really much, much, much better than the pretty pictures. So there is a bit of a communication hurdle that needs to be overcome, and I'll be glad to work with you off this conversation on how to overcome that communication barrier, because we face it as well at City Taps. I'm curious to know how your efforts have been welcomed or resisted by the regulatory environment and by the national water provider, WASAC. Do they see you as a collaborator? Do they see you as a competitor? Is the government helping you? Is it making it easy for you to have licenses, or is it instead putting up hurdles?
Yeah. Being in Rwanda, where government is quite efficient, you can't really just operate on your own. There's going to be regulations. There's going to be people you need the recommendation letters. They're okay just to be operating, especially if you need to be laying pipes across communities. You can't just do that. So for us, when we started, first of all, we signed an MOU with the Ministry of Infrastructure, and that MOU was quite exploratory. We didn't know quite how far we will reach. We didn't know how much funding we'll mobilize. So they took a chance on us very early on, saying, okay, we'll sign this MOU, even if you can't guarantee you'll give 100,000 Rwandans water within a certain period, which is what they usually ask. So I would say that was the first step that was very collaborative and allowed us to, just get on the ground and start figuring things out. And then with the water utility, national water utility, we also signed an MOU for them to supervise our technology. But that was never really a very good thing. I would say the collaboration there, it's a love and hate relationship. What we offer at the table is we can move very fast and provide water through mini-grids. So the national water utility is completely focused on large grids. They operate infrastructure constructed by government. We come in and say, we're going to build using our own money or resources that we mobilize ourselves. We'll never go to government for the money unless they choose to pay us. But we'll mobilize it to our own private efforts. We're going to build the infrastructure, run it, sell at your regulated tariff. So basically we say, don't worry about this area, we're going to take care of it. And through the MOU as well, they can come and take samples of the water, and we sometimes use the lab just to make sure our water is safe. we do have to work together sometimes, but I wouldn't say it's a good relationship, especially due to the lack of regulation. Being in Rwanda, this is something that everybody is aware of. So we have often a lot of meetings. We have now a ministry focused on innovation. We've met with the minister a few times, and she's rallying everybody and be like, how can we make sure a company like Water Access Rwanda is able to operate? So there is kind of a debate where we're kind of in a gray zone. We don't have a particular law that looks like a company like ours. We're not a straight utility, and we're not just an infrastructure constructor. We do all of it, and it's our infrastructure. We want to be able to mobilize private investment to fast track this construction of water points across the country. So I would say government is open and curious to see how we go. And in the meantime, the biggest focus is making sure that the water we provide is safe and is affordable. So there we are still regulated by government, but we're in between. So in the few years to come, as the water policy gets updated, right now it's being updated. There's a draft law to update it. We get to contribute sometimes and provide our inputs. So we're just being looked at right now as a particular case out there. And this is really only possible, I would say, in a country like Rwanda that's open to piloting new ideas. And we've even had a shout out from the president where he organized a youth town hall and invited all the ministers. So these have been things that have sent a strong word of support towards our way, saying, okay, these guys may be young, they may be figuring things out, they may be doing something that doesn't really fit anywhere, but work with them, see how we can get this to work and scale, because our results speak for themselves. It takes us 2 weeks to get in a community and provide them water. And if you ask our users, they're all the advertising we need, because they will tell the mayor, we have neighboring communities complaining, why don't we have Inuma water? Why do we have to have Wasak? Yeah.
So if I can, sorry to push forward I want to encourage all the panelists to keep the answers a bit shorter so we have time for more questions. I was very impressed when you said taking a chance, and we're talking about innovative solutions here, and whoever is listening in the audience who might be a government person or a regulatory person or working for a large corporation, this notion of taking a chance, which is inherent to entrepreneurship, is not something that's often shared by people in other organizations. And yet it's critical to allowing innovation to blossom. The very point of innovation is you don't know if it's going to work. And so it might not work. And so it might fail, as a matter of fact, to put it more bluntly. And the fact that someone was willing to give you that chance is really important and really should be commended and commented upon. Now, we have a question from Marlies Bartonik from Aqua for All in the Q&A. And I want to encourage those asking questions to use the Q&A rather than the chat, please. And it was a question I was going to ask, so let me ask it. How are the capital expenditures financed, and how is the operations and maintenance financed? And Philippe Jacques, that's your question as well.
All right. So we've been running this for 3 years. So there's what the model is going forward to and what we've been doing to get where we are right now. So it's a two-way question. One, with the model, we look at being able to use and recoup private investment, providing a positive return to the investors. So that's what the model is looking at. And so far, we've been able to achieve a 9% 10-year IRR, which is not very good. So we have different things in place to increase it. And we have a transition to scale ongoing right now, where we know we will be able to hit 43% in the minimum and over 100% IRR if we start also monetizing our impact, which is massive. Now, in terms of how we cover the operation and maintenance and all of that, that was our biggest concern at first, because we've been funded through different means. Government has bought systems from us. We've had grants. We've won a lot of prizes that have went to providing water to people, and we've also taken on soft loans to be able to construct some of these mini grids. So our biggest concerns at first was, is this going to lose money? And by losing money, we're talking about expenses of operation, like paying the people, monitoring. We do monthly maintenance visits. We monitor the water quality. and then we replace different parts. So different systems have a different lifespan, like some 2 years, some 3 years, some 1 year. You have to replace certain parts on a regular basis to keep the system functional. So all of these expenses were put in our model, and what we know is we're not losing money. So we're able to cover those expenses from user fees. So once somebody, let's say a philanthropic donor, gives us the money to construct a system, we will never return to them and say, oops, this system is now bankrupt or anything. No, it's gonna run itself and cover its own repairs. What we're still figuring out is, can a private person give me $50,000 and after 3 years I can give him 100,000? That's what we're trying to figure out to drive more capital into. To
be fair, on this topic, Christelle, you know, the networks in the north were built with government subsidies to a very large extent. And so having the expectation from donors and from financiers that somehow pipes should return a pretty penny on investment may or may not be reasonable, you know, especially considering the purchasing power of the customers. So this is a debate that I know Patrice and I have had, or in conversation Patrice and I have had many times, because it goes to the heart of how do you finance the water networks over at scale, right? So you're putting your finger on something that's really essential, and of course streamlining operations the way you have done it, etc., and maintaining O&M at the very low level, all while charging a very small tariff, is critical. But at some point, you know, if the investors are expecting a return on investment for their pipes, it might be a tough equation to crack. So we're putting our fingers on the very problem here, and how to unlock the $114 billion that are needed every year in order to reach SDG 6, and that's CapEx money. So there is room for grants. I think it's really important not to dismiss that. We have a question from Hildebrand before you have to go. She says, as you said, you're providing water in a convenient manner in such a way that water to your kiosks taps is safe. Now, I want to emphasize that you're not just providing kiosks, but also water at home, which I think is much better, personally. Through transport and storage chains, water can be polluted. How are you having embedded services to tell people to protect water from internal pollution sources? I'm not sure whether this is,
So yes, what we do already at the purification process is we dose the water with chlorine. And we leave enough free chlorine so that if the water gets recontaminated with biological contaminants, as long as there's still some free chlorine, so when it's running through our pipe, it's still going to be safe. The free chlorine will take care of the extra bacteria introduced in the water. But the biggest way we ensure the water stays safe is monitoring. If you don't monitor your pipes, you don't monitor your output areas, you can end up with contamination you're not aware of, and that's the worst. So we monitor our pipes, we monitor our network. We do it right now on a monthly basis. We hope that the technology will become more affordable to monitor along the pipeline automatically. Right now, we would add quite a burden on the low tariff we're trying to charge. But what we do is frequent testing, and then we dose the water with chlorine, which sometimes there's also acceptability issues. Initially in a community, we see that the first 1 to 3 months, people don't really like the taste of chlorine, but get used to it. It's something we found. We have to do a lot of sensitization to say, okay, chlorine is actually good for you for these reasons. If you drink our water 3 times, you won't notice it afterwards. And it's not too much, because we're not putting too much as we're in a safety situation, we're not in an emergency situation. In terms of other pollutants, what we're starting to see, which requires bigger collaboration on a catchment basis, is pollution from our source. So for example, we've had some of our water sources get infected with things like barium, which is like, how do we have barium in this water, you know? So there could be potential for other contaminants coming into our source, which can make the purification process even more expensive. And unfortunately with that, it really has to be collaboration on a catchment basis. We're collaborating closely with the Rwandan Water Board. First of all, doing our part to get the water permits and reporting our water usage to them. and then sharing some of our water quality analysis with them to help with monitoring, because they have some few monitoring wells, but we have a bit more data on that. But the rest is everybody has to play the role, and Rwanda is doing a lot to restore our swamps, which are natural filters for the water. So there is some of that going on. But in terms of the question that was asked, getting water pipe to people, the biggest contaminant you worry about is biological, so chlorine can deal with that, and the rest we just make sure we use pipe doesn't leach into the water and so on, which are design issues.
Okay, so thank you very much, Christelle. Thank you for taking the time for being with us today. Feel free to go at your convenience. We're gonna thank you very much and give you a virtual round of applause. And I'd like Jamila Bargach from Darcy Mad to introduce her organization and her work, and we'll proceed with with another presentation by Régis Garandeau and myself, and then we'll take all the questions at the end after a brief conversation between us.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you to Resource Think Tank for this invitation. And I'm really, it was a beautiful presentation by Ms. Christelle. It was great. And I echo a lot of her conclusions and processes. Is it possible to have the presentation up?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yep, here.
So this is a very, very brief presentation. I want to really have a discussion about the fog collection. So I'm speaking to you from Agadir in South Morocco, but the project that we have is actually even south of here. It is in the Anti-Atlas Mountains. So fog collection has always been something that's really interests people. It's very sensationalizing. It's very interesting. It's very mysterious in a lot of ways. And so the region where we work, there's a lot of fog, and this fog has always been a sort of curse, seen as a curse, and lived as a curse by the community, the Berber communities living in the Anti-Atlas Mountains. However, fog is also a solution, and what we have done is identify a problem already almost 15 years ago, that actually the desertification in southwest Morocco is increasing due to climate change, and that there are serious social and environmental consequences from mass migration, from loss of vegetation, the argan trees that are very endemic to the region and unique to the region, all the living situation, I guess, the living livelihood have been compromised. And so given the history of fog collection that has existed in other places, and I can answer that later in some of the questions about the history of the technique, we said, all right, let's try in the organization, the parent organization of the one I head right now, let's try to see if this can work. And so what we did in 2006 already is to set a net, a square net that actually measured the height, the amount of water that's in. If I can go earlier to the presentation, please, Grégoire, go a little bit earlier. So to measure how much water is in fog, and that's the experimental period that's extremely important. So we started that in 2006, then we started building in 2010, after we realized that we actually had the second best average of water out of 1 square meter of nets, we get 10 liters and a half. And from there, we started looking for financiers and donors, and we started building. And it took us 5 years to be able to build the project on top of the mountain. And since 2015, we've been adding villagers to the network of pipes that we were just speaking about. And actually, we have become today the largest fog collection in the world. And we service about 17 villages. If I can go to the next one, please, Grégoire. We have been serving 17 villages, 16 villages with the nets that are right here. This image shows you the place of the nets. And so one of the major issues we've had is logistics. And I can speak at length about logistics and trying to figure out how you take an idea, which is innovative, which is a little bit crazy for a lot of people, and then turn this crazy into reality. And so this is like our force in that we have raised to the challenge of making fog into potable water, but it is the idea that's interesting. And at the same time, all the 16 villagers that actually today drink this water. So we have this set of cloud fishers that are on top of the mountain and that have been built with cooperation with our German partners, the Water Foundation, the Wasserstiftung, with funds from the Munich Re Foundation and the German government also. And I wanted to give you a close-up on the fog cloud fishers, because there is a whole history about cloud fishing or about fog collection that unfortunately is not much known. And I mean, at least you're interested in issues of fog and alternative ways of collecting water for communities. So a lot of research has gone into thinking and designing this type of nets so that it increases the efficiency of the collection. And so today with this, when we started, we had 1-ply nets. Today we have a 3D net that actually doubles, even at times even more than doubles the amount of water we get out of 1 square meter. So we're speaking today about 22 liters mean average of water in 1 single meter. Now we have 1,700 meters plus the capacity of storage, etc., etc. So I want to go into the next slide, because it's very important for me as someone who has been working on issues of fog collection for the last decade that has gone this quickly, to always speak about this history of fog, because it is something, it's an area that's unknown. It is an area that's kind of not necessarily accepted. It's not mainstream. So when we look at the history of the fog collection, we know from the literature that it has existed in the Canary Islands with the dragon trees. And the communities, the Guancho communities that are believed to be Berber communities that lived in forever until the 16th century, when the Spanish were using the Canary Islands as a stop to go to the Americas, actually discovered, and there is a very famous text by Las Pasas about the Canary Island tree, that the communities actually used the water from fog under these trees, and they already had a water regime of distributing the water. So there was a guard on this water. And then, fast forward centuries ahead, and in the 1970s, we started seeing experimental moments throughout in Namibia, in South Africa, in South America, of trying to collect fog water, until a new organization showed up again in the 1980s in Canada, for Quest, that actually started mainstreaming, if you will, the fog collection. And that's what we see here. That's the next one. It's called the fog collector, that were they're not necessarily patented, but they are created by this organization. And one of the first major project was built in Chile in the 1980s. And then, however, there are some technical and structural stability issues with the fog collectors, which then we moved to the cloud fishers that I showed you a small, a kind of a detail on the close-up, because they are very sturdy. They have a structural force that withstands high winds, etc., etc. And then we are really looking and working with some universities, researchers, students about thinking, how can we have a dynamic harvesting system? There is a lot of red flags that are raised about the harvesting, the dynamic system, because it's like, oh, again, another extractive technology by humans. How about we just let the fog be and we let it be kind of passive as it is right now? So these are debates about this alternative source. But one of the major issues that has being shared by the community working on fog, and we're about 300, 400 folks working on this resource, is that we never sell water for any commercial value. The water cannot be sold. That's an ethical, kind of important ethical corner of fog harvesting communities, one. And two, that we're always thinking about local solution and small scale. And let's look at what's available, and then we can take a decision about how the best to use this water. For the organization where I am, we have today a community that has access to potable water. Kids are going to school. Women have much less work to do, just like Christelle said in Rwanda. And we have succeeded in kind of raising that challenge and meeting the challenge. Of course, there are a lot of other challenges and limitations that I can address during the Q&A question. And I'm wondering if we can see the illustration, or that is not possible. No, okay, that's fine.
Unfortunately, we didn't manage to do that.
That's not a problem. I invite people to go, and it's available in the internet very widely. And I will stop here because I'm interested in questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jamila. Appreciate your presentation. I confess that when I first heard about cloud harvesting, I thought it was nonsense, being a Cartesian engineer. And I'm glad that I was wrong, and I'm proud to admit that I was mistaken. And I commend you on this rather, as you said, crazy idea and crazy innovation. And at the same time, if it isn't crazy, maybe it's not what we need. So let's move on and give Régis the floor to talk to us about how the Vitol Foundation supports innovation and takes wild bets in the water sector to help grow access in Africa in particular.
Thank you very much, Grégoire, and thank you to the think tank resource for giving me the opportunity to share what we're doing. I'm going to talk very briefly about the foundation, because we are not a very known foundation. We are rather discreet. We're a Swiss corporate foundation linked to the Vitol Group, an energy trading business. And although we are a corporate foundation, we are very disconnected from the business. We are funding projects all over the world in developing countries, not necessarily where Vitol is active, and we're funding in different sectors: education, health, agriculture and livelihoods, and water and sanitation, which is what I manage. But we do not fund energy projects to keep things separate between the business and the foundation. We're providing tailor-made and flexible funding. We are essentially a grant maker. That's 90% of what we do, and that will remain so. But we can, when it makes sense, provide also debt or equity. We focus usually on relatively early stage, risky projects or businesses. And whether we fund projects or businesses, and whether it's actually grants or impact investing, our focus is always on impact first. We actually don't mind losing money and taking risks if it generates good learning and if it's useful for the sector. We always try to support models, projects and business models that can be scalable, replicable, and sustainable. The high-level indicators of performance at the foundation level are we want to improve the performance of projects and businesses. We want to promote inclusion. We want to promote innovation, and that's a good topic for today. And we also want to provide catalytic finance and make sure that what we fund is financially sustainable. Within the water and sanitation program, our strategy is structured around 3 key topics. The first one is WASH institutions and systems. So this is mostly about water and sanitation services governance, and a big chunk of that is public governance. The second topic is about WASH businesses, and we support a range of businesses, either non-profit or for-profits, that deliver innovative services or products. And the last topic is about WASH finance. I mean, so Grégoire mentioned it before, there is not nearly enough money in the WASH sector to reach the Sustainable Development Goal 6. We are, in the grand scheme of things, we are a very small funder, so we can't pretend to solve the financial gap of the sector, but we are trying to use our small amount but flexible money in a way that can catalyze investments from non-WASH investors into the WASH sector. The global goal of our WASH program is to strengthen the local stakeholders and systems to deliver, scale up, and sustain safe and inclusive WASH services and practices. Innovation is actually a topic that runs through the strategy, through WASH governance, WASH businesses, and WASH finance. But our main focus in innovation is what I would call soft innovation. So we support innovation more on business models, service delivery models, innovative financial mechanisms, rather than innovation in technology or infrastructure. We do a bit of that, but that's not the core of what we do. If I have a bit of time, I can briefly present one project per topic. Is that okay, Grégoire?
Yeah, go ahead.
Very shortly, because I think we shouldn't spend too much time on presentation. But so in the first topic, WASH governance, I can talk about a consortium called Agenda for Change that we support in Rwanda. Agenda for Change is a consortium of relatively large NGOs like WaterAid, Water for People, IRC, the International Water and Sanitation Center, who come together and work with the local authorities in Rwanda to achieve universal and sustainable water services in specific districts. The innovation in that approach is that NGOs come together to work with the local authorities and work with standard approaches in different parts of the country. And they stop doing a small project here and a small project there, and they work at the scale of an administrative unit, a district, and they work with the local authorities to make plans and budgets and implement them to reach everybody in these districts, and then use that as a blueprint or a template to reach other districts in the country. In wash businesses, I can mention Jibu. It's a safe water enterprise that we support in East Africa. They work in Rwanda, Uganda, Kenya, Congo, Burundi, and other countries. The principle is basically that the water sold by utilities is usually unsafe to drink. The quality is not good enough, and so Jibu sells high quality drinking water in large bottles, 20 liters, at an affordable price. So that they're a bottled water company, but selling bottled water in large quantities at a low cost. And they're trying to make this system, this business model, financially sustainable across their different countries. To do so, they have a franchise model, and they also diversify their products. They don't offer only water, but they also they also sell food products like fortified porridge, or energy products as well. And in wash finance, I can mention the consortium Uptime that we support, which is a consortium of social businesses that offer that provide maintenance services for rural water services. And Oxford University is also part of the consortium, and they are building an innovative financial mechanism to reward these these private rural water service maintenance operators according to their performance. So if they work well and the water points that they are maintaining are working long enough and well enough, and if they work towards financial sustainability, they get financial rewards from the consortium. This is a payment by result mechanism that is being tested at the moment in East and West Africa, that we're supporting, and that we hope can be generalized to reach up to 100 million people by 2030.
So thank you very much, Régis, for this presentation. And I want to say that in the interest of full disclosure, that Vito Foundation is a shareholder at City Taps, and that we're grateful for their support. Give me a couple of minutes to introduce City Taps, and then we will have a quick discussion with Jamila and Régis, and look at the Q&A for questions. So please feel free to put up your questions in the Q&A. But before I give my presentation, Jamila, I will play the movie that I managed to download. Is it the 17-second one that you want me to play? Yes, okay, so I will do that.
Please, if you could mute the voice.
I will mute the voice.
Thank you so much.
So everybody should be able to see my VLC player, and I will just play. So here you can basically see the mechanics of how this system works. And there you go. As advertised, it's only 17 minutes, 17 seconds long. I hope you enjoyed the show. So City Taps, in a few words, before we move on to the discussion. As I mentioned earlier, our vision is running water in every urban home. And for us, urban means anywhere that there's a pipe. So in fact, the villages that Jamila and Christelle were talking about qualify as urban for us. So today, and the reason I founded City Taps is because there's 1 billion people who live in cities and don't have running water at home today in the 21st century, when it's a well-known fact that the Romans could provide running water. So I think it's really not a question of if or how. It's a question of why we are not doing it at this point. And we recognize that the water utilities are, in our view, are the only ones who are going to be able to provide a solution at large scale to reach this billion people, but they face three main challenges. The first one is large accounts receivable, 5 to 20 months of outstanding arrears from their customers. They lose 30 to 70% of the water that they produce. This is the dreaded non-revenue water that practitioners are aware of. And they carry something on the order of 40 to 60% of inactive accounts, just to say 40 to 60% of their customers at any time, subscribers, clients, call them what you want, are disconnected and therefore not receiving service and also not generating any revenue to meet the operations and maintenance costs and to pay for the investment. So that doesn't really work. So what we've created is the world's only smart and pay-as-you-go metering solution. It includes a meter here, which is communicates through radio with the internet, where it is managed by our software, the City Cloud, that handles payments from mobile money. It's very important here to differentiate between prepaid and pay-as-you-go. Under a prepaid system, you convert the amount of money paid at the moment of payment, independent of what the tariff structure might be, and therefore you cannot follow the step tariffs that are usually the rule in most developing countries, and that basically ensure that as you consume more water, you pay more for water. That cannot be enforced with a pay-as-you-go solution. It can only be enforced with a pay-as-you-go solution. Cannot be enforced with a prepaid solution, can only be enforced with a pay-as-you-go solution. Because the pay-as-you-go solution keeps the money in your wallet and transforms that money into a volume of water at the moment of consumption, and therefore follows this step tariff function. In a more synthetic way, this is the way that our solution works. The person makes a payment by mobile money, think M-Pesa, think Orange Money, those systems that are widely available in Africa in particular. The information transits through our software, the City Cloud. The money goes to the water utility, and the meter is instructed to open or close so that the water can flow from the water utility to the subscriber. The advantages, of course, are that the utility gets paid in advance. The customer can manage their water budget. There is no surprise bills. But almost more importantly than any of this, almost more importantly than the convenience, than the dignity, than the time, than the health, than the money that people are saving, is the fact that this flow of money here that you see is transparent. These are digital payments, they are fully transparent, and they're fully routable. And this is the killer app that we have developed in terms of unlocking financing into the water sector and making SDG 6 actually achievable. And the reason for this is that this money can be routed to the account of the financial institution that is financing the water utility. And unless we are able to deal with the counterparty risk posed by water utilities whose financial statements are often through no fault of their own, not creditworthy, until we can route the money in a safe, transparent, digital way so that the financial partners, be they commercial, be they non-commercial donors, whatever their return on investment expectation is, so that they can know that they're going to get this money back at some point. Until we do that, I don't think we can actually legitimately hope to solve the SDG 6, to crack the SDG 6 nut, investment nut. So here the money can go to the water utility directly, but it can also flow to a bank here that is not on this picture, and then to the water utility. And in that case, the bank or the investor, call it what you want, can be sure that they will be paid for the money that they have lent to the water utility for the purpose of purchasing the solution or for any other purpose at all. And there is what we do at City Taps with our goal of bringing running water to 1 billion urban people within our lifetime. So I'll stop my presentation here, except to say that we are a company based in France. We have operations in Niger, where we operated our first project. We also have a project in Kenya, a small one in Rwanda with the national water utility, another one in Namibia, in Burkina Faso, in Senegal, and as well in Ecuador. If anybody, of course, in the audience is interested, I'm happy to speak to you on the side about what we do and how we can work together. But before we do that, I want to ask Patrice, we have someone named Garance who's joined. Should I give her the floor?
No, she's not panelist, so sorry, Garance, but
all right.
I'm happy to have you with us. That's not
right.
That was not.
I wasn't sure if she was a last minute addition. Mm-hmm. So one of the key things that I'd like to discuss is as we talk about innovation, is the right to failure and the room to fail. And I'd like Jamila first to talk about how she overcame the reluctance of funders to fund her crazy idea. And I say this with absolute goodwill, bienveillance in French, and a lot of respect, of course, because I think the idea being Expenditures is equally crazy, frankly. And then I'd like Régis to talk about how a place, an organization like Vitol can help to soften the risk that other investors and financiers might be taking, because the organization is willing to, in fact, take these bets on untested projects. And then I'll share Expenditures' experience on that. Good, so can we keep it brief, please?
Thank you for the question. I could speak for hours about the right to failure, and I think that failure is so important. And I've actually taught a course on failed projects, because that's how you learn and how you grow up, and how you kind of rebondir, you can trigger another kind of process. I think that in the beginning, everybody thought we were just simply crazy, that it is impossible. You can do it on a small scale, but how can you make it on a larger scale? So that was for us one of the major issues, is the scale, even though all things considered, we still remain an extremely small scale. 16 villages, 127 households, is really peanuts. However, for the idea, it's not peanuts. So that's one thing. Now, the second issue that we had was more about logistics. The failure of the logistics was absolutely hard and difficult and challenging, because we are on top of the mountain on a dirt road that is extremely dangerous. And I think that took most of our effort, was about the how to get there. As far as the idea itself, the science and the history proved that it was possible. And I think that the fact that we built on that was a sturdy foundation, and the fact that we believed in it, and folks who were already on top of the mountain told us that they did gather some water from the fog that came. And I did send another video with this kind of thick fog that you can actually see that how fecund it is. Failure is a possibility to build forward. And isn't it Canguilhem who said the history of science is the correction of the faults of science? And I think that thinking that we can have it right the first time is, even based on engineering and science and models and math and engineering, doesn't leave room for trial and error. However, for trial and error, you have to have the support, financial supports. And this is where ideas and presentation of Mr. Garandeau has been extremely interesting, in that, all right, we invest in a crazy idea because it may work. And that is sorely needed in an area where we will only go into a paved road, that we don't take a third road. And we need to take a third road and try. And I keep it there.
Okay, thank you. Régis, do you want to chime in on the topic? You need to unmute yourself.
Sorry for that. Yes, I'm happy to talk about risk and failure. I mean, there are a lot of water stakeholders and funders for whom water is their core business, and they do it with an obligation of performance and with an obligation of financial sustainability, in which case it's much harder to test innovative things that might risk to fail because it doesn't look good for them. In our case, we're a foundation. We're not working for profit. We're really working for impact. Most of what we do is grant money. So in a way, by essence, we lose the money, and we're okay with that. We're using this the fact that we are not that water is not the core of what Vittel does, and that we can lose the money to test at small scale innovative financial mechanisms that can or actually innovative products or services that once de-risked by us or with support from us, we're never alone. Once de-risked, can be scaled and interest larger financiers. So the main thing for us to be able to innovate is not how much money we have. It's basically not being afraid of making mistakes and not being afraid of losing the money. And we can go through different iterations to find something that works, and that we will not have the money to scale, but that will be ready for bigger financiers to scale.
Thank you, Régis. And so I'll share a little bit about CityTap's path to innovation and indeed the many stumbles, if not outright failures, that we encountered along the way. But I think it's really critical to recognize that coming from a place of privilege personally, I was able to leverage my contacts to get early support from somebody who's currently in the audience, in fact, to sign a contract with CityTaps to give us the legitimacy that there was, in fact, an interest for someone else to then finance and take the risk on the innovation that was yet to be developed at the time. And so a couple of grant-making organizations came to our support. We were able to build the solution based on the initial trust of the Société d'Exploitation des Eaux du Niger, the Nigerian water utility company, and on the financing from Verizon, in fact, of all places in the US, and the GSMA Foundation, who funded the first pilot project in Niger. And implicit in that financing was the fact that maybe it would not work. Maybe it would not work, and there was a clear understanding on all the parties involved that we would put our best effort, of course, and we would create something that would work to the best of our ability. And so what we did in order to, because we were we recognized that we only had so many chances, right? We built 20 units for a 10-unit project. We built them with the intention of working for 6 months and failing after 6 months. because it was a pilot project that would last 6 months. And the 20 units all of them lasted for over a year. So they were grossly over-designed. They were grossly, they're like those Roman bridges that are still standing after 2,000 years, right? I mean, there were clearly too much stuff in there. They were too expensive. But they needed to be there in order to prove the concept and the business model and the fact that, in fact, when you use this solution, this technology, people will use it, people will like it, the utility will actually see its money, and it would prove that, in fact, there was an appetite. And so this notion of going in small steps was very important. Now, the difficulty came from the fact that we were actually building a hardware solution. And in this way, Jamila's project is the same. It's a hardware solution, right? And Christelle's water access Ronda is the same. It's hardware, and hardware is hard. That's why it's called hardware. No, I'm kidding. It's hard because it's expensive. It's expensive, and once you start the production, you can't just turn very quickly, right? Because the supply chains are long, etc. And one of the things that I keep talking about when I talk to people who fund innovation is the need to have differentiated timeframes for funding hardware and funding software. Because software, you can just edit the code and sort of fix it as you go. But hardware, once it's ordered, even before it's even deployed, you're kind of stuck. So that's a big difficulty with innovating in the hardware sector, in the hardware field. So we have about half an hour to go, and I want to take the questions that are in the Q&A. There's a question from Gonzalo Pizarro to CityTaps. How do you deal with innovation in projects with utilities where regulatory frameworks won't allow trial and error to invest on proven solutions? Now, that goes to the heart of interpersonal relationships. The only way that we have solved this problem is by having trust between individuals, specifically the general manager of SEN back in 2015, who said, okay, let me take a small bet. And then based on that proof of concept, we have been able to disseminate with other utilities, in part by inviting them to Niger. The other thing that we've done is that we found that nobody can resist a free lunch. And so the French government has a very innovative solution called the FAZEP, and we have used that vehicle to fund a project in Kenya, because which is a free project for the water utility. Again, because the risk that you take in a free project is very much lower than, I apologize, than when you have to put your money in your pocket. And again, you have you don't have this trial and error ability. You may lose your job if you trial and fail. So that project in Kenya has allowed us to have people in Kenya go see the project in their backyard. Because again, on top of what Gonzalo is pointing out, there's also this notion in the water utilities that, well, Niger is not like us, Kenya is not like us. Everybody wants to see close to home something that looks like what they're used to. So that's an added layer of resistance to change. So the next question is for Régis. Can a progressive tarification system where the price per cubic meter increases in tranches be integrated and managed by your system? The idea is to provide a minimum and affordable base tranche to all users and reflects a reasonable usage. Is that a question for Régis?
I'm happy to answer generally that progressive tariffs is usually a good thing, in that first people pay for the water, which makes the systems more sustainable, and it's cheaper for people who use less water, who are usually poorer. But I guess the question was more for you, Grégoire.
So in our case, yes, we can handle the tariff tranches, which we support as a way of providing support to lower income households. It's a matter that I prefer to take offline because it concerns only CityTaps. We have a question from Brian Waters. I work on this topic in Sierra Leone, so I'm not exactly sure which topic it is specifically among the ones we've discussed. For those of us working in locations not mentioned in this presentation, do any of the presenters have advice or resources that could help identify or locate successful programs and organizations in our areas? Jamila, do you have any ideas, recommendations for Sierra Leone?
Well, usually for fog collection, there is a study, meteorological study that's done on a long term. So I'm not sure that there is fog in that region. We'll have to go back and look at the maps and see, because the fog is connected to the cold currents and so on and so forth. So, and depending on the regions, I'm not sure that there is fog there. However, I just want to, can I go back to the question of the progressive payment, because we do have such a thing about progressive payments. What we have done in setting, again, our software, like you said, Grégoire, was to have a system de palier, you know, like if you use as a beneficiary, because we call them beneficiaries, they're not customers, we are an organization, we're not selling water, though we do have a symbolic payment for the water, for the maintenance. That's, again, how we manage some of the expenses related to the maintenance and the upkeep, which is extremely important and takes a lot of our money. So what we do is that we have from a zero amount to 1 ton with a certain symbolic price, and then we go in levels, in kind of stairs. And the reason we've done this is that we're still within a region where there is serious water scarcity and serious water shortage. And the pattern of the rain has changed. The water amount, the rainwater has decreased through the last 20 years to the extent where wells are totally dry. Some have been totally desiccated. And so the idea is that, okay, there is running water into the homes. This is fog water mixed with some groundwater because of norms. The fog water is pure, it doesn't have any minerals, so we have to mix it. And so there is a whole kind of gymnastic of the percentage of groundwater, fog water, etc., etc. And we need to have the funds to pay for that. However, we discourage very, very much people from overusing the water. Now, these are people who have grown again into water scarcity. So there is not, for the older generation, there is a serious water respect. However, with the new generation, like Ms. Christelle said, that the community, there is a dynamic of change in generations. And so how do we account for that change also? We can certainly do it via the palier, the stair system. However, there are other issues that go into the education process that we do with the children, and that's where we do all our education on water, which is also very important and a component to the program of accessing water. What I'm saying is, for a small scale project like ours, we can not only deliver water, but we also have to educate about water, because you go from the well to water in your home. There is a total change in accessing and in the relationship one has with this resource that's so vital.
I want to make sure that we try to answer Brian's question about Sierra Leone. Régis, do you have any suggestions?
Yes, I mean, so there is innovation everywhere, and I don't think I currently have any project in Sierra Leone in my portfolio, but there are good water stakeholders working in Sierra Leone. I think generally speaking, with innovation, the problem is to disseminate and replicate and scale. it's good to make something that works in one place, in one country. It's much better to once this works, to disseminate it and to make it work in many other countries. So I think there's there are good innovations in Sierra Leone. Actually, one that comes to my mind that is called the Water Point Data Exchange. It's an initiative from the Global Water Challenge, and it's about collecting and using water data on rural water services, as well as artificial intelligence to help governments make predictions on failures of water services and water needs and so on. So, and that's working in Sierra Leone at the moment. I think, generally speaking, you shouldn't look just in Sierra Leone. You should look all over Africa and see what works and try to replicate it in Sierra Leone.
I would very much go with that response. I think that there are solutions that may transfer more or less easily, not always, cut and paste, but there's always adaptation and cultural things taken into consideration. And that's very important, never to forget. Certainly speaking for City Taps, I can say that we would be very happy to work in Freetown. In fact, we have been talking to UN CDF, which is the Capital Deployment Facility, I think it's called, Capital Development Facility, and they alerted us to something called the Blue Peace Program that came out of the Transform Freetown agenda, which is rolling out water kiosks and toilets in Freetown. So there's definitely a dynamic environment going on, but it's not a country, unfortunately, that I know very well or that I've even been to. So I can't give any more detail on that. But feel free to reach out offline, and we can see if we can help you differently. There's a question for Jamila. Yes,
Grégoire,
Régis?
just before we go to the next question, I would say innovation always needs a champion.
That's true.
It's difficult to do something new and to convince people that it's the right thing to do. It's likely to fail at first, and before you find the right model. And so in a way, you can't wait for others to innovate. You have to look at solutions yourself and try to drive the change. And it will be difficult. I'm sure Grégoire and Christelle and everybody can tell you how difficult it is. But yeah, I mean, so you have, in a way, you have to be the champion for this.
The importance of the champion cannot be understated. I mean, this goes back to the answer I should have given. I should have included that in my answer to Gonzalo Pizarro earlier. And indeed, we have found that the utilities that were willing to pilot our solution and spearhead change are the ones with visionary leaders who have a measure of safety afforded to them by their management. They know they're not going to get fired if they fail, but also they have the vision themselves to be willing to take risks and to do things that haven't been tried before, and to be the champion and to sort of carry the flag across the barricade, because there's a point at which there is a risk to the person, and they have to be willing to take that risk. A question for Jamila here, as I look very mindfully at the time. Please, Jamila, keep your answer short. Thank you for the presentation. FogNet water collection was new to me, as it was, I'm sure, to lots of people. For $1 invested, how much return do you record through water as an estimation, or is that a trick question?
It is an important question, and I think a lot of financiers ask that question, and it's a very valid question. Now, please remember that we have done this for over 15 years, and there is a lot of R&D, research and development. And so again, like just the panel has been saying, all the members of the panel, that you need to take risks and take chances in investing. So there is failure. So do we count also the failure when we do our breakdown into the dollar value? I think if we were to do that, the number I would quote right now would be absolutely humongous, and would in some ways take away the credibility of the project. However, what we count is the fact that, hey, we have proven that an idea works, there is an alternative, and then there is also the quality of life of the communities we service. Right now, we're speaking about something in almost a dirham per liter. However, that is very approximate and it's not set. But the time saved, the quality of life, the fact that people don't migrate, that there is the possibility of keeping up traditional livelihoods and trees and agriculture is absolutely important, and is the systemic sort of services that the earth gives at the same time through the human labor.
And indeed, finding ways to assign a dollar value or euro value or dirham value to that is critical in order for the conversation to become probably more rational. As I said earlier, by way of introduction, the northern governments didn't hesitate to plow huge amounts of money literally into the ground in the form of pipes, because it was obvious that running water in people's homes was necessary. There's one last question by Tamas Gabor Palfi. How much wastewater will be produced per person, and what are the best possibilities to invest in collection and treatment infrastructure? Now, this requires not one, but two seminars, probably, maybe even three, because it is the killer question of SDG 6. How do you manage wastewater? So at City Taps, we've been challenged by people who, frankly, didn't take a lot of time to think about what they were asking before they asked the question. So you're going to give people water in their home. What are you going to do? You know, that's going to be a catastrophe. What are they going to do with all the wastewater? I said, you know what? Once we solve the water at home access and earn our first Nobel Prize, you know, we will deal with the second problem of wastewater, because frankly, you know, it seems like a bit putting the horse before the cart, if you will, allow me the expression. At the same time, it's a critical question of how to manage wastewater, and cannot just be dismissed glibly the way that I just did, because it will cause massive health problems if it's not addressed. How much wastewater will be collected and generated depends to a large extent on the types of technologies, plumbing technologies that are used, and whether or not people use dry toilets or not, and the kinds of infrastructure that the government is able to fund to put in place. There are several options for decentralized wastewater management that are currently under piloting, specifically in Kenya. I'm thinking of companies like Sanovation, companies like Sanergy, that you should feel free to look into what they're doing. And of course, there's the good old septic tank, and there's the good old pipe solution. Those have to be priced accordingly to the service provided. They have to be managed properly. They pose a number of environmental issues, but I'm curious to know how Darcy Mad is handling in a very rural environment this question, because what I've answered is really in an urban point of view.
Well, we've discovered through the years that it's actually not very sexy to ask funding for sanitation projects, and this is something
I would disagree, actually, Jamila. Now there's a lot of money, especially from the Gates Foundation. Go ask them. They
wonderful.
Love to fund poop.
Okay, we will look into that. We will look, but we're small scale. So small scale. Yeah. So what we've done is that we've realized actually that people used to have a 6 liter per person consumption prior to the fog collection, which is almost below the WH level of water consumption, and now we are at a 26 liter per person per household, which is huge, 20 liters. Where does that water go? These are extremely old houses built with the traditional way. with the septic tanks. And so we've been monitoring, actually, every 2 years, we've been monitoring the level of the septic tanks. Now, we have many proposals on the table, like the villages where we work are disaggregated. They're not all aggregated, so which makes it extremely difficult to kind of take away all the used water, the gray waters, and put them into one center place where we can treat them, right?
Jamila, you need to wrap up in 1 minute because we need to give a chance to close out.
We have many possibilities right now on the table, and it would be just local and phyto sanitation with plants. This is what we've been doing. This is agricultural land. We can use the wastewater also after treatment for agriculture. So those are the plans that we have.
So let me thank the panelists, and in the interest of wrapping up, hand the microphone back to Patrice. Thank you for inviting all of us, and thank you for your attention throughout this webinar.
Thank you very much, Grégoire. It's a real top end on time, I would say. It's 10:27, so I've got a few minutes, just few minutes to tell you a few words about Ressources. I know that most of you know this think tank, which has been created years ago now. Just giving a word on that, this is really the place for organizing regular debates to highlight local initiatives, giving impetus to solutions also. And have sometimes some tough debate on very political and very, I would say, ethical way of giving access to water and energy in emerging countries. The added value of Ressources lies in its plurality of the members and contributors, a lot of French and international personalities coming from various fields, research, universities, political, private and public bodies. But all of them, they share the same idea that access to water and electricity is at the key essence of the development of human beings. Having said that, I would encourage you to visit our website. There are a lot of informations. You have our former, of course, our former webinar, but also podcasts that we realize every 15 days with different personalities around the world. Thank you again for this morning, and hope to see you at our next webinar, which will be at the end of the month. Linked on, I would say this in French, l'urgence et le développement, mais que reste-t-il donc à faire? And for this topic, we have top guns of the field who are going to be on the panel list. I will let you discover this through our website in the coming days. Thank you very much, Grégoire. Merci. Thank you, Jamila and Régis. And I look forward to see you very soon. Bye-bye then.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.